like saying which is the best car and leaving out Toyota. I had to ride it in. Yeah. Story about Yantarev in the olden days, the Gemaras were bound with leather and had like wooden covers covered with leather, very, very heavy. And Yantarev was very sensitive, he got the whole shots. And one day he was fasting and he noticed his hands were shaking. He decided that's where he got fast.
Stop fasting, you said?
He was less in favor of it after that. He said, weak as a person, he can't learn this. I'm looking at you lifting up from the soil, I can't do that.
has changed. Not changed.
You can center the chair a little. The chair, they move the table so it's not in the center. This one here shows up.
And this is going to show up. This stand is showing up?
What?
Ah, this you don't
No,
see.
it was a chair.
The
You're
chair,
right. You moved away the chair.
yeah.
Funny, when you have to move it the opposite direction, you think.
It's very easy. One of a bunch of classes. He goes through them like crazy. What's your sweater?
Yeah. I forgot I asked her.
What is that? What's happening?
I wanted to ask, when the Alter Rebbe speaks here that you cannot reach it unless it's a gift, it's the same concept in Tanner that to become a tzaddik, it's a gift, and the ruach of one tzaddik has to attach itself to you. Is that what the Rebbe means? The Alter Rebbe means that's the meaning of the concept of a tzaddik, and not the Beinoni. In this minor
China? China.
But you can wear it over your face.
Then it's not pessimistic, it's just different category. Just like Yisrael can become a Kohen, so it's just what you are.
No, in other words, that's what makes the real relationship. A person shouldn't become arrogant. Arrogant. A person shouldn't be even spiritually arrogant.
Think that
He owns it. It's his. Every experience of a lakus comes from Hashem. It says in Medrash, tzaddikim doimen laboidim. Tzaddikim are compared to their creator. It was once at a Fabrengen in Yud Shvat, I think, Tovshin Chaf Aleph, 61 or so. So the Rebbe said in the middle that sometimes a chassid, in the middle of the day or middle of the night, feels an experience of closeness, of kiruv, his kashrus to the Rebbe. She said he should know the reason is because the Rebbe is thinking about him then.
I had that experience only once.
Huh?
I had that experience only once.
What happened?
Sitting in this kino with the Shir Rambam.
Yeah.
Suddenly I just knew what the Rebbe thought about it. I asked him, did you feel anything? He said, no. But I just knew it. I can't explain why or how. But that happened only once. 35 years ago.
So what was he trying to say? He was trying to So you could say, you think it's your thing. It's not that Rebbe thought about you, but it's something so much more powerful. It means how close you are. So tzaddikim doimen l'bayram, that Hashem in His whole infinity, He wants a relationship. And b'makom shata moitze gedulasai, shamata moitze am v'snusai. Right? It's the humility, the ability, the desire to compress it, that it should enter into the human brain, into the human heart. That I should be able to experience it. The human being should be able to experience the love and the connection and the intimacy with Ein Sof. Which logically, how can that be? Ani Hashem lo shanisi, hayahovah v'yiyeh, kula kameka lo chashav. If kula kameka lo chashav, how can my brain have a chshivas? My heart, my experience, my emotions, my life. Somebody sent me, they reproduced last week, a few days ago, an image that was taken from planet Earth 30 years ago. They sent, a spaceship, robotic, to go check out Mars or different planets. It wasn't part of the plan, but they thought it's going to already be gone. It's actually still doing work, like 30 years ago. But on the way, somebody had an idea to ask it to take a picture of planet Earth. And it was a whole new investment in money, but they got it done. So somebody sent me the picture, and it's very humbling. It's like a speck of dust on the surface of infinity. You read the newspapers, it doesn't look that way, right? You listen to your heart, it doesn't look that way. But that's not from infinity. That's just from that's from further away. It's not a small marble. It's like a comma speck, like something that on your suit you get rid of. That's what it looks like. That's not Legabe infinity. That's Legabe quite a few million miles away. When talking Kula Kamei, it's a Cheloi Chashav Mamash. Nonetheless, He chose that I want to think about you. I want a relationship with you. I want this to come into your heart like something that you could feel in your experience. So Avadatam Esavaya Elikeichem. You typhus? Huh? We're just explaining from yesterday. So we'll continue weiter. We're up to page 157 on the middle of the second paragraph. The end of the second paragraph. No, the third paragraph. So everybody understood yesterday about the clay raycon? To have a base vlad? Okay.
Comes out that America is very good.
Clay raycon?
America is very good.
Is that how the Russians used to make fun of America?
Something like that.
Americans are very sincere. Came here.
Sincere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Choose America then. All the other Russian nations.
Okay, ayin test, column 1, the second to the last paragraph. The line starts with V'cholol ke'ilu ayin v'efes mamash. Yep. So he spoke about creating the base vlad, like the Uman with the Patish who creates the Chalal. Ach oid achasi mashamru razal. But there is one more nekuda, or one more instruction, and that is what the Chazal tell us. As kois shel bracha tzarich hadocha mibifnim. Actually, some of you are going to be learning this Gemara now, the next few days. And the brachas, towards the end of brachas, Daf Nun Aleph, is the sugya of kois shel bracha. It's also in Shulchan Aruch and the laws of Birchas Hamazon Kuf Pei Gimel. That kois shel bracha tzarich hadocha mibifnim. There's shtifa and there's hadocha. The kois of bracha, meaning the kois that's used for benching, Birchas Hamazon, which, as we said before, Knesset Yisrael is called kois shel bracha, kois Yeshuos esa, kois hamachzik yayin, which is yayin hamisameach. But there has to be a kois, so you have a kois. The craftsman carved out the cavity in the kois. No, now there's openness. It's not anymore an akara ein la beis vlad, that there's not even a potential for a child. There's not even a potential for emotions. Why? Because the person is stuffed up, the person is plugged. They're completely filled with their own issues or insecurities or traumas or egotism or whatever it is. But rather the Uman, the craftsman, carved out that there's a makam panoi, there's a makam chalal. There's a sense of ayin ve'efes mamish, which is, as he said, that's the beginning of all hope, the beginning of all openness to something greater, to something truer, something deeper. Now I have to take the kois shel bracha and rinse it out, not only from the outside. Mibifnim, tzarich hadocha mibifnim. That's the halacha in kois shel bracha. Like every halacha in Nigla, every halacha in Torah is a reflection of a halacha in Pnimius. Every halacha in Nigla is a halacha also in Torah's HaNefesh. There's doing the halacha physically, taking the cup and going to the sink and rinsing it out. Then they didn't have sinks, but whatever water they had to rinse out the kois. But there's also kois shel bracha tzarich hadocha b'fnim, within myself, within my own mind, within my own heart. Va'inyan hu ki afilu mishu nitke b'teva. Even somebody that by nature there is a cup that's empty. Somebody by nature is very humble. Sometimes life circumstances, a person doesn't have the metzach. Metzach is a forehead, but it's an expression in Chazal for like the chutzpah, to be pompous, to be arrogant, to lift up their head. Sometimes a person is by nature very humble because of life circumstances or whatever. Or even somebody who's not, but they carve out the cup. You still have to rinse out the cup. The cup could be empty. It's open, you could fill it up, but it's filthy. Hadachim b'fnim means I have to rinse it out, I have to cleanse it. That's what lahadiach means, to rinse it. Afilu l'dvarim hamutarim liyis mekusher behem b'chol leiv nefesh. Sometimes what happens is, and here we have in one line the concept of distractions. Not distractions of forbidden things, because that's easy to see the negativity. It's distractions of permitted things, permissible things. That a person's heart sometimes becomes connected with his entire heart and soul, what we would call very deep, you're very, very connected with your whole heart and soul to things that are l'chayra permissible. But what are they? Obsession, a habit, an addiction would be probably. B'chol leiv nefesh means I'm completely entrenched in it with my whole heart and soul. So if it's a davar ha'as or something forbidden, so obviously it goes without saying you have to rinse it out. But apparently the people sitting when the Alter Rebbe said this Maimah didn't have that issue of dvarim ha'asurim. They were erlich yidden. Dvarim ha'mutarim is something else. A davar ha'mutar is something that's permissible. Shulchan Aruch doesn't say that it's forbidden. But the fact that I do it with my entire heart and soul doesn't allow my kois to serve as an antenna to anything else. Why? We call it today numbers. You have numbers. You know what a number is? Not N-U-M, how do you spell it? B-E-R, right? So, It's not so negeya how to spell it. It's negeya the inyan. What does it do? When my heart becomes... A person has... listen, people have feelings, people have pain, people have anxiety, people have different things going on. The natural instinct is I want to try to avoid that. How do I avoid it? How do I avoid it? I avoid it through something that gives me some gratification, at least for the moment. To B'meila, it's a distraction and it's a number of pain. What happens if I have deeper experience and deeper emotions? I become connected to those things in the depth that is similar to the depth of the pain. The depth of attachment to different distractions becomes as deep as the void that I have to try to fill. That's the B'chol Lev Nefesh. Why is it my whole heart and Nefesh? What is it? Because it has to compensate for the soul that is experiencing something. But it's very hard to go to that place. So therefore I have all of these types of things that avoid my confrontation with that which is uncomfortable. And sometimes it's Dvarim Ma'asurim, it's Pashut addictions to horrible, toxic, destructive things. Over there, the boundaries are very clear. But Alter Rebbe is saying it could be Dvarim HaMutarim. Not everything is permissible. But your connection to it, your running to it, that is filling up the Kais Shel Bracha with dirt, with filth.
What he said on top. Even Arba and Yira.
Yeah.
Would fill that if it's my own.
Yeah. Even Ava V'Yira, if it's my own, will also be that. Yeah. Ad Kedei Kach. And that's already spiritual stuff. That's not cheesecake. Cheesecake is also spiritual, but it's hard to find. Everything is spiritual. But you have to get to the nitzuts of it. Yeah. But food is a very good example. Food is not a davar ha'asur, food is a davar ha'mutar. We all know that. Sometimes it's even a mitzvah to eat. There's Shabbos, there's Yom Tov, yeah, Einig Shabbos, Einig Suda Shabbos. So sometimes it's not only a davar ha'mutar, it's sometimes a davar shel mitzvah. Yeah. Drinking wine is sometimes a mitzvah, a kiddush of Shabbos, Yom Tov. Huh? Matzah's deraisa. Okay. Omar is the Rabbanim. And what is cheesecake? Minig Yisrael Torah. Steht ma'achale chalav. You could be yotze with a coffee also, just for the record. Especially if you're up all night. Huh? Okay, ashtikal kez. Yeah. So it's a davar hamutar. But everybody knows there's two ways of dealing with food. One is that I live in order to eat, and one is that I eat in order to live. And they're very different. I live in order to eat means the eating is part of the distraction of life. So I'm stressed out, I go to the pantry. I'm more stressed out, I go again to the pantry. You know how many times people open the refrigerator within 25 minutes? It shows their emunah that within 20 minutes God created yesh meyayin, a whole new meal that wasn't there 20 minutes ago. It's a fascinating thing. What happened in the last 20 minutes? Nobody went shopping. But of course it's not negeya. You're not looking for something specific. What I need is something to distract me from the void that the kais opened up. And what happens then is the person's entire heart and soul is connected to something, and only by disengaging from it can I remain with an emptiness that allows me then to open myself to be filled with emes, with truth. And that's a very deep avodah. We learned in the previous Maimer in B'Shalach that tzimtzum lav koidem lahein, right? That Sur Meirah has a depth that Asay Tov doesn't have. Mitzvahs Leises is higher than Essay. The Yud of Shem Havaya Deleil is created through the tzimtzum of a person. The Hey is through the hispashtus of a person. Hispashtus of a person means I'm involved in something. Tzimtzum of a person means when I have to withdraw, when I have to disengage. In other words, I have to be able to trust the essence. I have to be able to trust the organic self and not feel that I always have to cover it up with something else that will be a quick fix and therefore will not allow me to feel whatever I have to feel. And therefore, when I don't do it, when I do the opposite, when I allow my nefesh and my heart to gravitate to all of these things, What am I doing? I'm basically, each time, I'm ruining a tremendous opportunity of very profound awareness, a very profound closeness, because I'm covering it over with other stuff that don't allow me that opportunity. So it's really it's a sensitive issue. Ki efshir la'olam sheyiskayim asiyas dvarim hamutarim b'loy leiv gamke. This is not a war. This is not the saying. We're not talking about mortification, that a person shouldn't eat, shouldn't drink, shouldn't sleep, shouldn't do things that are permissible and productive. The question is, how much of your heart is inside of it? In other words, how much of it is a distraction for other things, not for the purpose itself? Eating is a beautiful thing. That's how we live. That's how God wants us to live. And there's the avodah ruchnis of achila that we learned in many Maimorim, what food is, food for my lamatoyu, and the divine spark of food and so forth. The question is, when something captures my heart, it's already something else. Now it's a filler for my emotions. It's a different experience. It's actually abusing the food because it's not respecting the function and the purpose that the food itself has to offer. Suddenly the food is now being used, it's being manipulated, so to speak. If somebody takes the heart and it becomes nikshar becomes addicted, entrenched, tied up, behevlei ha'olam, in various vanities of the world. Again, not necessarily things that are forbidden. So over there it's stronger, but even things that are permissible. Ef shali is clay kibble. My keli is not a clay kibble, and we almost see it because I'm filling it with other stuff. You understand what Alter Rebbe is saying? To be able to open yourself up to that void, a clay kibble is an open keli. That means there's nothing there. Then God could fill it. Then the wine, yayin hamisameach, could fill it. But if I'm filling it with other things, so what happens? Ef shali is clay kibble. It's not a clay kibble anymore. So just like we spoke before, that sometimes there's a person who bichlal doesn't have a clay kibble, there's no base vlad, I have no uterus for emotions, spiritually speaking. There's no womb to be able to carry a child, to be able to love, to be able to have, why not? Because it's plugged up, it's nistam, it's metumtum. As he said, ein lebeis vlad. So what does it have to do? The uman has to take the hammer and carve it out. That's step one. Now what's step two? So l'chayr, I reached everything. Step two, now be very careful. Because now when you suddenly start experiencing a void, you're going to run to China. You're going to run everywhere. You understand? This is the danger when you have a clay kibble. He says sometimes you have a poor person. He naturally has a clay kibble. But I want to fill it. And the male, it's not a kibble anymore. And what am I filling it with? I'm not filling it with that which I'm really searching for. When you're filling it with that which you're really searching for, that's the point of Kodesh Bracha. Put in the wine. I'm filling it with other stuff. That's why you have to put your whole heart and soul into those stuff. And tomorrow more, and the next day more, and the next day more. Because if that was what you were looking for, so you filled it. Well, so go home, go to sleep, you're happy. But it's not really what you were looking for. You were looking for something else. This is a distraction of what you're looking for, so it never ends. It only increases and increases and increases, because the more you do it, the more you feel the void, and the more you feel the frustration that even though I'm doing all these things, I still have a void. So now the void becomes deeper, so now the distraction has to be deeper. Here in Drai Shuras, you have half of the 12 steps. Achi yitar. You have to clean up the kais. The example for this is you have a cup and it's filthy. You can't put in wine. It's a crime to put in wine. You can't put in good, wonderful, delicious wine, fragrant wine. Until I wash up the kais. There's an empty kais. But tzarich hadocha mibifnim. That's the diuk mibifnim. There's the hadocha mibachutz. There's things on the outside. Things on the outside is things that other people could see. Mibifnim is internally, a person knows internally who he is or she is inside. That I have to clean up. Mibifnim, it's my own pnimius. And without that, the wine can't come in there. V'chein ha'isha lo tuchel lekabel hiroyin afilu yesh bla beis vlad im lo nitera mitamasa. Back to the initial metaphor of akara. That's what the pasuk is. Don't see him shakel of akara. The woman, from the halachic perspective, cannot receive the child, the embryo, the pregnancy, even though there's a beis vlad. Im lo nitera mitamasa. If there's the cycle that Hashem made, there has to be first the tara, the cleanliness from the tumah, from the traumas and the issues that are brought up by the cycle of blood, which is going to be discussed a little later in the Maimer, what that represents on a spiritual level. Yeah. And it's not just halachically. You could say, well, it's also biologically. We know that, it's not the focus here, but we know that the halacha, the time of mikveh, right? It's fascinating how it coincides with the time that is usually, unless there's exceptions, but usually it coincides with the time when the body, the feminine body, is the most fertile, it's the most keli to be able to be mekabel of vlad. Ovulation is dafka that time. So it's not just, he's not just saying a psak din, without tara she's not allowed to. Pashatin mitzias, it has to be after the cleansing of the dam. Pashatin mitzias, that she becomes a keli. Why is it biologically that way? Because spiritually it's that way. Because in the spiritual hilchas nid it's that way. That to be able, there's opening, having a keli, but to be the keli, to be able to have a vlad, it has to be tzarech hadachim b'fnim. Tzarech hadachim b'fnim. I just want to point out an interesting thing. You're learning hilchas berachas hamazon is about kosher bracha. It's in Masechta Brachas, the end of Nafnon Aleph, and it's in Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim, Hilchas Berachas Hamazon, Kuf Pei Gimel, I think. Hilchas Nidus and Even Azer. It's completely two different sugas, they're not connected. Kosher Bracha by benching and Hilchas Nidus are as remote from each other as Lahavdil, as what are the two planets of men and women? Mars and Venus. Yeah. But that's all when you're looking at it just from the physical, technical component. When you're looking at the teichen of it, the pnimius of it, yeah. So what's true in one realm of halach is true in another realm of halach. So that's how the issues become connected. So a person really has to ask themselves, first of all, do I have a clay kibble? That's avodah number one. But he says, you have a clay kibble, a gewaldik. I've been humbled by life. Some of us have been humbled by life, and it's true. And you know, when you have been humbled by life, you know you have been humbled by life. Your ego is not in the way anymore. And ego usually doesn't... The Alter Rebbe is very much, if you realize that the ani disturbs everything. The truth is that the big ani, of course, comes from the small ani. The ego comes from the ultimate insecurity, that I cannot be who I really am, so I have to create a compensation called the ego. As we say, ego stands for the words easing God out, right? Because I have to compensate. So let's say my ego has been punctured, that's the word, punctured. So now the Uman, the first thing he has to do is create a puncture, right? You're not carving out a keli if you don't have access. So you need a puncture, you need a hole, and then you have a tfisa and you could carve it out. L'chayra also is good. Tzarech hadachim b'fnim. Without the hadachim b'fnim, all the humility goes nowhere. Why? It opened me up to pain, and now I'm busy distracting myself. And by the way, distraction doesn't only mean, it could be all types of things. Anger is a gewaldige distraction. Right? Anger, I'm frustrated, my temper. Yeah? And I could say it's permissible. I'm angry about holy things. But all these nakudas that the clay kibble doesn't have adacha. You have to really rinse it out and keep it open, purely open to what it really needs, to what it's really looking for. And if without that, the wine won't be able to flow in it. It's already stuffed up with ragalach, with babka, with herring, whatever. I don't know what you put into your kosher bracha. Kol chad lefum shura delay. I'm giving benign examples, I know.
Well, our example is very bad because we're using silver cups
the chlor is good for the wine anyway. You should have a glass. So our wine is already tempered.
I hear you. But you could use a glass cup for kosher bracha. Who says you shouldn't use a glass cup?
That's what I'm using. I have a better.
Okay, and you should oxygenate the wine and do everything you have to do.
That's the only way I can experience the emes.
Of wine, of yayin ha'mesameach. Okay.
Can't fake it. So the same thing as.
There's a powerful story about there was the fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe. His name was the Rebbe Rashab, Reb Shalom Dov Ber. He passed away exactly 100 years ago. Beis Nissen Tofresh Pei, 1920, in Rostov on the Don River. He was the fifth Rebbe in Lubavitch, the son of the Rebbe Maharash, who was the son of the Tzemach Tzedek, who was a grandson of the Balatanya. His father was Reb Shmuel, the Maharash, and he passed away very young, in his 40s. And the Rashab, his younger brother, his middle son, was very young at the time. He was like 21 or 22. And so he didn't feel that he should succeed his father. Practically, he did a lot of things. He said, my mother, he helped people, but it took him maybe, I think, 10 or 11 years until he agreed to fill the steps of his father. He had an older brother whose name was Dirazah. They called him Razah, Reb Zalman Aaron. He was an older brother of his. In the early years, when he still wasn't officially, didn't officially agree to succeed his father, a Jew once came to where he and his brother lived, which was the city of Lubavitch in Belarus, a small town in Belarus. And he needed a Yeshua. So he came in to the Rebbe Rashab, and he told him his dilemma, what was going on. So the Rebbe looked at him, and he said in Yiddish, Ich kann dir nicht helfen. That was it. I can't help you. So the Jew walked out of the room, and right when he closed the door, he broke down sobbing. And he was in the hallway, and he was like leaning against the wall or sitting on the floor, just sobbing. The Rebbe Rashab's older brother, Reb Zalman Aaron, walks by, and he sees a Jew sitting and sobbing. So he said, what happened? So he said, I went into your brother. He called him the Rebbe, and I told him my dilemma, my problem, and he tells me, Ich kann dir nicht helfen. Now, he was the last hope that I had. I tried everything. He was the last hope. I walk in, he says, I can't help you. So I know it's a lost case. I don't know what it was, but it was a very personal and deep matter, obviously. So the older brother, the Razah, since it was the earlier years, so he still, he felt he was the older brother. So he walks into his younger brother, and he gives him a piece of his mind. He says, Ich verstehe dich nicht. I don't understand you. A Yid comes for help. Yeah. Even if it's true that you can't help him. So sein. That's what you do. Ich kann dir nicht helfen, have a good day. Some comfort, some encouragement. A Gemara says, "Afilu cherev chadam unachas al tzavor shel nodam al yimnatz b'men harachamim." Even in dire situations, you don't give up hope. That's what he comes to you for. Give him some tikvah, they say, some encouragement. You just say, "Ich kann dir nicht helfen." He's rebuking his I don't want to say his baby brother. They had another brother, but his younger brother. So the Lubavitcher Rebbe listened. And he said, yeah, Rufa Marai Nachamal. And I forgot, he told him, you know what you did to this guy? He's sitting and sobbing. Where's your heart? So he says, Rufa Marai, ask him to come back. And he put on his hat, he put on his gartel, and the Jew came back in. And he told him a whole thing what to do. He gave him a ganze eitzah what to do, and the person was helped. The person had a Yeshua. That's the end of the story. What's pshat? What's pshat in the Maisa? Yeah. It's taka a funny thing. First of all, his brother is right. Sometimes you can't help somebody. We all know that. But what's the right thing to do? You can give them a hug. You can encourage them. You could say, I'm here with you. we don't always have advice. I don't know if we ever have advice, but sometimes we certainly don't have advice, right? But you could make a person feel that he's not alone. Somebody once told me he lost two siblings, two sisters passed away. So people came for Shiva. So everybody has what to say, all the Chachamim have what to say. Yeah. And he said there was one person said to him, Hashem should give you koyach to be able to deal with this. So, sometimes there's nothing to say, but you could say, I'm here with you, I'm thinking about you, I'll daven for you. That's even if you can't help. But here the question is much stronger. His brother gives him mussar, he says, call him back in, and he helps him. So why didn't you lechatchila help him? Because you said you couldn't. So what happened suddenly 5 minutes later you could? And if you could, why do you say in the beginning that you can't? It's a hard story to understand. So the Lubavitcher Rebbe said over the story, and he explained it based on the story of Masechta Tainis that I shared yesterday with Rebbe Elazar Reb Shimon, when he told the person, ugly one, come, empty one, how ugly are you? Are all the people from your city so ugly? When he explained that story, he said that he thinks, but he said, but he thinks that's pshat in this story. When the person came into the Rebbe, of course he would have helped him. He saw the man cannot be helped. Sometimes a person is in a situation, you can give them all the advice in the world. Those of you who know about giving advice to people understand this very well. It will be useless. Not only will it be useless, sometimes it could be used in the wrong way. You're giving them words that they're not shaykh to hear. You could tell, everybody knows, you can have somebody in your life who tells you all the truth in the world about you, the most important things. If you're not ready to hear it, it's a bracha levatala. Or in this case, it's a kais shel bracha levatala. There's no kais. There's no kais. No kais. I'm pouring wine. I got tug. I can give you the best wine in the world. You got no cup. You got no cup. Since Purim is coming, I'll tell you a geschmack of art. There was the Gemara says in Masechta Megillah, Kol ha-parshet yad noisnem loy. Yeah? Comes to Purim, you don't discriminate. In Shainus Shulazech, Kol ha-parshet yad noisnem loy, a ganze year. You don't have a choice. But Purim, Kol ha-parshet yad noisnem loy. Whoever stretches out his hand, you give. So it was once Purim, Tavshin Chavav, 1966, the Lubavitcher Rebbe finished the Purim Farbrengen, and he said, no, it says Purim, Kol ha-parshet yad noisnem loy. So whoever is parshet yad, noisnem loy. So people understood. So people started to come with a cup to get l'chaim, and he gave wine, he gave mashka, whatever it was. They finished. It was a big 66. It was a big oilam came, and it took, I don't know, an hour or so, around 3 or 4 in the morning. He finished. He went up to his room. Then he was going home. It was already late, the middle of the night. So he went out, and somebody brought more wine or more of mashka. So he continued to give. Came outside on Eastern Parkway. If you know Eastern Parkway, there's a service lane over there in front of 770. He went to go, somebody would drive him home. By the car, they brought more, and people started to come from the whole neighborhood. In 66, there was a lot of other Jews in Crown Heights. It's before the mass migration. So people came, the rumor had it, the Lubavitcher Rebbe is giving everybody, so people came in the thousands. The Bachrim wanted to see it, so they went on top of the car because they wanted to see it. So it was Miskayim in the 4 wheels of the car. Teitzei Ruchai, Yashuv Lad Masai, 4 flat tires, and it was a tzir. So my uncle told me that there was a Bachar who went over by the car to get l'chaim, and there was already after hundreds and thousands of people went. The Lubavitcher Rebbe took a look at him, and he says, "Dachte chadur shen genommen." I think you took already. He was from the first ones who took in shul. So he says, yeah, genommen, aber gehat a loch in kap. Gehat a loch in kap, which means I had a hole in the cup. So the Rebbe said, da hast a loch in kap, was it helfen als ich geben a zweite Mal, wird sich weiter ausgissen. If you have a loch in the cup, what's going to help if I give you a second time? It'll pour out, it'll spill out again. So he says, ich gekrogen a neue cup. He says, in the interim, I acquired a new cup. He says, okay, so I'll give you. And he poured again. Of course, cup here has a double meaning. There's a cup and there's a cup. Yeah. So you could pour wine all day and all night. If there's a lachin cup, meaning if there's no clay kibble, was vertalfen, you could get wine for 50, 60 years. You can hear truth. There's people who were exposed to truth for 40, 50 years. Loi noga v'loi poga. Why? I don't let anything go in. It's not a clay kibble. And then there's a person who hears one vart, one tippe, he gets one drop, yeah, and a child is created. La'olam vada, binyan adayat, adar yisham. Why? Because there was a cup. So you could say everything. If the person is not ready, it's going to be useless. So he said that the Rebbe Rashab, he saw this Jew. He's in a position where he can't help him. He cannot help him. You want to help him, but you can't. An example, it could rain. A person will say, it's a year of drought. There's no rain. We don't have grain. It rains and rains and rains and rains. But one thing, you didn't plant. Or even if you planted, you didn't plow. The earth is not fertile. It's raining and raining and raining and raining and raining. And nothing grows. Why? You didn't plow or you didn't plant. Which, as I said before, that's the clay kibble. So you could sometimes be in a situation, yeah, you're pouring wine, kaisel bracha, yayin amasameach, adela yada, without a shear. But there's no Sedar Lachin cup. So the Rebbe saw that he can't help this Jew. But he wanted to help him, so what did he do? He said, I can't help you. And that touched him. You can't help me. In other words, I'm in a situation, if you can't help me, nobody can help me. Sometimes one line, nothing else touched him, because he had the protection. You know, you have your gear, your protective gear. Suddenly, for the first time, it touched him. He went out, he lost himself, he broke. The Razah sees how Yid crying. He runs into his brother, starts screaming at him. What? This is how you deal with a Jew. You know what his brother was hearing? His brother wasn't hearing Musa. His brother was hearing, the Jew opened up. The Jew opened up. There's somebody did psametzias, psakeli. Somebody can hear something. No from Tzedek Harayin. And now he prepared himself also. Because it was a serious thing. A relationship was a serious thing. Put on his hat, he prepared himself also. It wasn't, when a person prepares himself, it works both ways. You know, when a person comes in a shir, right? When people come in unprepared, so it's always reciprocal. A person comes in prepared. In a yeshiva, the bachim come in prepared. The Rosh Yeshiva prepares also. And the same is true spiritually. He became a clay kibble. You're a clay kibble. Now we could work. But now when you're a clay kibble, there's a new danger. You're going to fill it up with other stuff. This is what happens very often. I told you many times, I heard this from Dr. Twersky. It sticks with me because it's so counterintuitive to what most people think. I was in Boca with him for a Shabbos, Boca Raton. It was a Shabbos of recovery. Boca has a lot of recovery centers. They did a Shabbaton for Jewish people in recovery. There were like 600 people there, all in recovery, some 30 years. The only person there that wasn't in recovery, I think, was me. And I had to speak to them. So, and maybe Dr. Twersky, because he said in one of his speeches, I wish I was in recovery, but I'm not addicted. But the truth is, who's not addicted? It's just what type of addiction and how dysfunctional you become. I don't know if somebody who's not addicted, is there somebody who's not addicted? It's very hard not to be addicted to something. It just may be benign. You just may not be, your brain may not be fried, but unless you do hadachim b'fnim. If you do hadachim b'fnim, means you're not addicted. You tie off all your ksharim. Boom, 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 boom. What are you left with? You're left on the surface of infinity with God. Who wants to do that? Right? 7-layer cake is much more secure than infinity, isn't it? Rabbi said, what can you rely on more? Ein Sof or 7-layer cake? Huh? You ever saw somebody say, I have a kiddush, I have yard sites, yeah? So what are you serving? I'm going to serve infinity. Come on. We can't gain some bank. You can't go to the bank with it. A 7-layer cake, you can go to the bank. So we were sitting there. So I asked him, you've been in this work for 60 years. Today it's probably 70 years. What did you learn? What did you learn? He says, you want the shortcut? I said, what do I have to learn what you learned for 60 years? I could speak to a guy like you and learn what you learned in 60 years in 10 seconds. So he said, the most greatest thing I learned is that people who are addicts are usually the most spiritual among us. I said, why do you say that? He says, because life is challenging and people have voids. But most of us who are not so sensitive and not so deep and not so spiritual can live with lies, with hypocrisy, with cover-ups, and we remain functional. Those souls that can't live without God because they're too deep, they're too sensitive, they're too spiritual, they go crazy. And therefore they need all the destructive toxics in their brains to be able to numb their pain. So what you're looking at is dysfunction on one level and deep spirituality on another level. Your typhus, that's very profound. And when you're that person, it's a very comforting idea. In other words, it's always commensurate with how, I see it with the teenagers. You go ask any therapist in Muncie or Borough Park or Lakewood or anywhere in the world, Yerushalayim too. Or ask even mothers, fathers about their children who are struggling most, including children who left and ask them, oh, this probably was the child who was the most selfish, right? The most narcissistic. The child who was probably the dumbest. The child who probably couldn't care less about anything. And every mother with tears in her eyes, and I've done this with not 10 people, but maybe hundreds of mothers, with tears in her eyes say, he was the kindest. She was the most sensitive. She is the most sensitive. He was the most spiritual, the most perceptive. When he was 5 years old, he was the hope. He was the apple of the eye because of how much potential in this kid. So it's a funny thing, right? You'll see this down. You could look. Isaac, I'm right or not? Huh? You deal with all these kids. You speak to them for 10 minutes, you'll see it. What's pshat? The pshat is because Chaba Hatalia, when there's so much yearning, when there's so much yearning, when my clay kibble is so big, it's so deep, it needs so much truth. And it's not so easy to get the real wine. So what do? I need big stuff to distract it, and the bigger the deeper the keli, the more deep it has to be. Because if not, it's not going to numb me. That's the hadachim b'fnim. Hadachim b'fnim is I have to have the courage to be able to clean up my entire clay kibble and not allow it to get connected to anything that will make it filthy and therefore remove the potential for the keli opening up to what really could and should fill it, which is what? Not artzecha, not my love and awe, but allow Ein Sof ba'atzmai, atzmos Ein Sof, Hashem himself, to be able to come into the relationship. Tumas nida, dam nida, spiritually represents, even physically, represents various toxins in the body. And it creates a change in mood. It creates a change in mood because it's hard. It's hard. Yeah. It's not easy for a woman to go through what she goes through. Not a lot of men don't know about this. They don't even understand it. Yeah. It's a change in the body system that creates challenge, creates difficulty. It's an emotional, somebody once said, it's an emotional roller coaster sometimes. But it's spitting out, as we're going to see later, it's spitting out something. And once it spits that all out, biologically, the uterus is now ready to carry a child. That's his last mashal. What does that represent spiritually? A tremendously potent idea. As long as I'm not ready to spit out stuff, I'm not ready to clean myself up, I'm not ready for Tara, then I also can't fill that up with what has to be filled up, meaning with a real child. A child which represents real life and eternal life. Binyan adayat. Generations, eternity, which represents also emotionally an emotion that's not fake, an emotion that's very real, that sustains itself. Okay. So tomorrow we sent out an announcement. Tomorrow and Thursday there's no shiur. I'm in Mexico City, Be'ezer Hashem. Friday morning we'll have a shiur. Everybody have a wonderful day and asach hatzlacha. Hatzlacha mit de klei kibbel und mit de koshel bracha und mit de hadacha mit befnim und de stiffe mit bechutz.
So this really is a continuation of the previous mimer?
Every mimer is a continuation of the previous mimer, but in this case it happens to be also specific. Listen at Moshe, whenever you're dealing with truth, it's a continuation. You understand? Emes doesn't contradict Emes. So it's always a continuation. In one way, in another way, in one way.
Never stops. I quit smoking 35 years ago. I want to smoke every day.
You want to smoke every day, huh?
Every day, every minute. The minute I think about it, or any addiction.
What, the nicotine? The nicotine is good, huh?
Suck it in any time.
Wow.
And I thought I quit. Mentally, I'm still there. And I can't touch it.
Rabbi Wallerstein talked about that in one of his things. He talked about it in the context of his family.
The minute I'm in the dire straits, I want to get a cigarette.
You paved the road.